Okay.
That has both of us in it, huh?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Some of the questions I have is, when did you first become interested in running?
A long time ago. I joined high school, or the high school cross country team in Hartford, Michigan, small farm town, as a freshman, and I was hooked.
And would you, like, how many miles would you run when you're in high school?
We didn't run a lot. We didn't know what we were doing, and our coaches were teachers who did other things.
Yeah.
So it didn't receive the same attention as the main sports,
Yeah.
football, the basketball, the baseball. But so I don't know that we ran much more than 20 or 25 miles a week. And there wasn't necessarily any rhyme or reason to what we were doing,
Yeah.
But we had a lot of natural talent on the team. We're still pretty good, but looking back and talking to a couple of friends from that team, we all regret that we weren't coached properly, because we think we could have been really good.
Yeah. So, and then when you got out of high school, you continued it?
Yeah, but not tremendously seriously. I went to a junior college initially, and
In Michigan? Or?
in Michigan, yeah, KVCC, Kalamazoo Valley Community College. And I don't know, I was kind of just mentally wandering. Didn't really, wasn't very organized or disciplined or really knew what I wanted to do. I guess good reason to go to junior college.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was started on a team during the first year, but never really invested myself, and stayed on during the track season. But again, I didn't do what was needed. So that was kind of it as far as serious high school and college running. That was the end of that. And then I just sort of ran sporadically after that, and didn't really get serious again until I guess my mid-30s. And then I got really, really serious.
And then, so what was the progression? Like, when you started getting serious in your 30s, were there some of the first runs you did?
I was concentrating on 5 and 10Ks.
Were you interested in speed?
I was interested. Oh yeah, I was extremely interested in speed.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I didn't run for all those years is because I thought I had, physical problems that weren't, that I wouldn't be able to. It's that same thing. Where I say, I can't run anymore, I hurt my knees, or whatever. I hear that all the time from people. But I started getting back into it really slowly because my wife Sue wanted to run, and we just, ran a mile or two, and just kept building up. I found that it was okay, and then I started, competing and doing races and stuff.
Now, how did you realize that it was okay, like with your knees and stuff? I mean, did you do preventative or like muscle building so that it was more comfortable to run?
Yeah. When I'm interested in something, I tend to study it a lot, so I was, reading all of the running magazines and specialized articles, and, kind of putting together my own routines. I have a background in studying yoga, background in studying Tai Chi, and just kind of incorporated all those things into the routines that I was doing. And but everything was directed to running, and running as fast and as serious as I could. But during that period, and for the next 10 to 13, 14 years, it was very uneven because I was having lots of injuries, trying to run. But they were muscle injuries, but they were usually, sometimes, a bone, a stress fracture here or there.
Wow. How do you overcome those?
You don't. You just rest for 6 weeks.
Wow.
There is no cure for that other than rest. I have a friend who I think just turned 50. I'm 56, by the way. Who still is just wants to run fast, wants to run 5Ks and 10Ks and marathons, and he probably has 3 stress fractures a year. But it's okay. He's okay with that because he still wants to run fast. So he sort of, I don't know, it seems like he sort of works them into his, his training pattern. He just knows he's going to get one, and he gets it, and then he starts his training series again, and he runs fast, and then he gets hurt again. But for me, the act of running, being able to run it every day is more important now than to hit some sort of speed thing. I mean, besides, there's only so fast you can go as you get older.
Yeah, and yeah, I did a half marathon, but I'll never be interested in speed because I won't. To me, it's the experience. I mean, I do want to increase mine just because it's ridiculously slow.
Yeah.
But
So you still run regularly?
Well, no, I need to restart. Last year I did the Columbus Half Marathon, and it was one of the most amazing things ever. I mean, I loved it. I loved it, and I loved, just being around everyone else. That was just like this amazing, euphoric thing, having that many people, and it's healthy. It's a healthy thing to,
Yeah, that's a big thing. The community is a really big thing.
They had about 100,000 spectators, and it made it fun. Now, how did you go, and had that progress after you did the 5 and 10K? Then how did you start progressing after that?
Well, at some point, it was always in my mind to do a marathon, but I had this this competitive thing driving me that I wasn't going to run it until I could run it as fast as I could. So I'd start building to a marathon, then I would get hurt in some way, and then rather than run to finish, which is kind of a real normal thing nowadays in this current running boom. People run in 4 or 5 or 6 or longer hours, just to get through the course, however fast. But I just had this ego thing that I could run. I should expect myself to run a certain speed, like under 3 minutes or 3 hours is what I'm saying.
Wow.
So it took a while, but I eventually, and I'm really horrible on years, but somewhere in the mid-90s progressed, mid-90s to late 90s progressed to running marathons. And
what was your first marathon? Where was that at?
I believe my first marathon was Pittsburgh.
With the hills?
With the hills.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I've always thought hills, you should just add, that would make it an extra 10 miles. Because it's so much harder to do the hills than just to do flat.
Yeah, and it requires a whole different approach to your training.
Yeah.
And well, I know we're going to get to this later, but road runners have a totally different perspective on what hills are than trail runners. I mean, any little bump or bridge or something is like this amazing ordeal.
Because you're a road runner.
I mean, I was then, but now I'm mostly a trail runner.
Oh.
But that's hills on trails are totally a different animal and expected. But at that point, Pittsburgh was a tough marathon, and I did pretty well. I think I ran a 3:12 or something like that. And then I ran 2 or 3 marathons a year for a few years, and I think it culminated. And I'm just horrible on dates and times, but it culminated with Boston in somewhere 2:02 or 2:03 with a sub 3-hour marathon, which made me happy.
Yeah, and you have to qualify for Boston, right?
Yeah. I mean, all my every marathon I ran qualified me for Boston. I was pretty consistent in that 3-hour to 3-hour 10-minute range when I was running marathons.
What about, I've heard, was it Boston the one that has that like heartbreak? There's
about mile 21, they have a series of hills, culminating with Heartbreak Hill, and it just comes at a time in a race where it's just hard to deal with because, the first 20 miles are one thing, and then the last 6 miles are a totally different animal. So it's it really hits you at a tough time.
Oh my God!
It was cool there because, like you said, Columbus, 100,000 people lining the course. Here in Boston, it was, 1 million people lining the course the whole way.
God, wow!
And I think that year there were 15 or 16,000 runners in the race, and it's just, the entire course is just such a cool experience.
I couldn't imagine that. And do they have just even the power of 100,000 plus with bands. I'm assuming they have stuff like that.
Yeah, also, you know, and you know, you go at one point, you know, you go past Wellesley College, and it's known as the Scream Tunnel because the girls are there, the students are there just going crazy. And then, you know, the hills, you know, people like the line of hills because they apparently like to see, you know, runners have a really hard time and die, but no, they're
cheer them on,
yeah, they're very encouraging.
Oh,
trying to get the runners up the hill, and then, you know, crossing the finish line, you know, is an emotional experience. You know, you got there, you crossed, you know, 26 miles, 385 yards later, you actually did it. It could be, you know, it could be pretty powerful.
That is cool. I love the signs. They had some really funny signs in the Columbus Marathon. I love spandex. One was my girlfriend may be white, but she runs like a Kenyan. It's just funny stuff.
Yeah, a lot of races like to do those little encouraging things.
Yeah, just people. Yeah, everybody just was encouraged. It was really nice. So then, from the marathon, then how did you then go to the extreme running?
Yeah, well, I don't know. There's kind of a progression as you get older and slower, you run longer. I mean, that's the way it's been for me, and I know other people who do that. But it's also just pursuing other challenges, you know, pushing your limits in different ways, you know, testing yourself in other ways. That appeals to me. So the actual experience was, I'm director of a public radio station in Youngstown called WYSU. We're in my office right now. And got this crazy idea to run an ultra race as a fundraiser. And this was a time when radio was transitioning from analog to digital, you know, as television had done earlier, and we needed a new digital transmitter. So we put this whole marketing campaign together. You know, run for the transmitter, and we had,
cool.
you know, we had water bottles as gifts with a kind of a, you know how Michael Jordan, you know, that Michael Jordan thing for the NBA, his figure, you know, like holding a basketball, about to go in a basket. We took a silhouette of me running and put that in the information about the race on the water bottles and other things. We did this whole marketing thing, and it was all getting people to pledge something per mile for me running this 50-mile race.
50 miles.
And I've never run a 50-mile race before. I never ran anything, you know, longer than a marathon. So it was like, you know, it was really stupid because who knew if I was going to be able to do it or not? You know, so we got something like $40,000 worth of, you know, pledges for this thing.
That's great.
And it was a race, you know, I'm from Michigan originally, and I thought I'd run a 50-mile up in Michigan. It's called North Country up near Manistee, Michigan, which isn't far from Traverse City. So that was it, and you know, trained all summer, not very smart. Like I said earlier, I studied stuff. I didn't study much for this. You know, trying to build my mileage and put together back-to-back long training runs, and didn't really know what I need to do regarding nutrition, because that's totally different when you're getting past the point where you have to take in nutrition. You know, these things. Marathon and under, it's not quite so important, but longer races, you know, you can't. You
have to
figure a way to eat while you run. So there was that, and fluids, and proper shoes, and proper strategy, and I didn't know any of that. So I just entered this 50-mile race, and the week before, we went up to Michigan. The week before, we were having in Traverse City an anniversary thing for my parents. It's maybe their, I don't know, 50th or something like that. And all of a sudden, something was wrong with my leg. You know, I went out for a run in Traverse City a week before this race, and something was wrong. I couldn't do a training run that weekend, and I didn't run for the rest of the week, and I did nothing until I got on the starting line of that 50-mile race, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it or not. It was crazy. So I had all this pressure on. You know, I had to run this race for all these pledges. I mean, we had all sorts of publicity. I was doing a blog. It was on the air all the time. But it was great. Once I started running, the leg was okay, and I actually had a really good first 35 miles.
Oh.
And then I had a really, really challenging last 15 miles.
Wow.
I was totally wasted. It was kind of a combination of running and walking and stumbling and on my way. And it was all on trails. It was on trails in a Manistee National Forest. So it was crazy hilly. I mean, I thought it was crazy hilly. I've run much hillier, races with more dramatic elevation gain since, but I thought it was, unbelievable, being a flat road runner moving to this thing. And so it was agony the last 50 miles, but I finished.
Wow. Wow, that is amazing. Now, what time do you start a 50-mile race?
Most of them start, kind of at, just after dawn, depending on the time of the year. And
Yeah.
I think this one started at, 6 or 7, because it was in July, or no, it was later. It was in early September.
Yeah.
But it was early, and they give you a time limit. I think this race is 12 hours. And there are aid stations every, say, 5 or 6 miles in the woods. So they provide water and some kind of electrolyte drink and a variety of snacks. Salty snacks, sweet snacks, fruit and stuff.
Wow.
And as a person totally uninitiated into this running, I didn't really know what to eat. So I ate a variety of things that I've since I fine-tuned that part of it a lot since then. But I had some serious GI issues along the way, shall we say? Some things came out that I tried to put in, but that's been a kind of a problem that has plagued me since, trying to figure out exactly what the right dialing and the right caloric intake is. But
so you have to finish in 12 hours.
You have to finish in 12 hours, or it's not an official finish. And,
wow.
And they stop.
How long did it take
support.
you?
That one took me about, I think, 8 hours and 45 minutes, if I remember right. It was
amazing.
And I finished, really well. I think I finished in an age group place, if I remember right, for that. Even with a bad last 15 miles.
God. I couldn't imagine, 15 miles being bad. I probably had probably 8 of my half marathon that were kind of bad, but I undertrained. But when you were, how many miles did you go up to consecutively before the 50 mile? And did you have somebody meet you with, or were you carrying like glucose or water with you?
I do that now. I'm not sure I can't remember exactly what I did then.
Okay.
But I tried to get, I think, maybe 2 kind of long, triple days where rather than try to run 40 or 50 miles or something before the race, the concept was that I would do 3 days in a row that were long. Like when people train for a half marathon or a marathon, you peak at a certain day, but then your days before and after are easy days.
Yeah.
But for this kind of training, you try to build up to where, I think for this first one, I think the best I did was something like, 15, 20, and 18 maybe 3 days in a row.
Wow. That was for your first one? For
my very first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you continue to do that with your other ones?
I do. In fact, right now, I'm going to jump ahead here, but I'm training for a 100-mile race in January.
Will that be your first?
No, it'll be I finished one, and I've only attempted one other. Or 2 others. I've mostly been focusing on 50-mile races, 100-kilometer races,
oh my God.
Timed races, 6, 12, and 24-hour races. There's a whole variety of things you could do in this, in this ultra world. But, so I am doing, in fact, the last 3 weekends, or last 4 weekends, I've been building up. So I just this recent weekend, I ran 41 miles over 2 days, and I was doing, I went from 31 to 34 to 37 to 41 over the last and those are just 2 days back to back. So it's like the last one was 22 the last one was 27 and 14.
Wow. Do you run during the week then?
And then I also run during the week, usually early because of what my schedule is. I'm often doing a Youngstown City run at like 5 a.m. Or if I can work a later shift like I did today, I can head down to Mill Creek Park and do just after dawn and do 1 or 2 or 3 hour run then. So I run mostly by time. I'm going out for an hour run or a 2 hour run, but if you convert it to miles, I'm probably running right now about 70 to 80 miles a week, and with no problems on my legs because I do so much trail running. I've learned so much about running form and pace and balance and all this stuff. I mean, it's really exciting because I really got this dialed in right now, knock on wood.
Yeah.
And I'm able to run as much as I want and not get hurt, whereas when I was running fast, I'm not running fast anymore. When I was running fast, I was getting hurt all the time.
Yeah.
So, trail running, it's you're often running 10, 12-minute miles, which sounds crazy for a road runner, but it's a totally different animal. You're running over roots and rocks, and you're running extremes, ups and downs, and so
I was happy to do 10 on the road, but
Yeah.
that's how slow I was. But see, I would the trail. I would think that'd be easier on your knees because the dirt,
Yeah.
But also wouldn't. I'm just thinking roots and rocks. Like I'd be worried about tripping.
Yeah, you do. You
Yeah.
fall. You take face plants.
But do you think it is easier on your knees than just doing it?
Yeah, without question. Plus, your foot's landing differently all the time, so you're working.
Different muscles.
Yeah, different. Everything's working together differently. You're not just doing the same repetitive thing over and over and over. Plus, you're doing extreme climbs where you're activating your hamstrings and your quads and your glutes in a different way. Same thing with the extreme descents. So you're kind of it's more holistic, I think.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So I've been since I love to run so much, it's so integral to to my life. It's so important. I'm happy that I can run every day.
That actually
almost every day.
leads right into one of the questions I have for you. Is that how does running in your life compare to other things in your life? Just like pleasure-wise,
Some would say it's borders on obsession. It's if I can run, that's the main thing I do outside of work. When I can't run, I do other outdoor things. So, bike or I'll do. I like to hike. I like to do I like to backpack. I like to canoe. But
I mean, like going to a party or the movies or something. I mean, is it?
It's interesting as I've gotten, especially in the last 6 or 7 years, I've gotten to not want to watch things. I grew up like any kid, really interested in baseball, and I, followed it, and I would love to go to games and other activities, and now I continue to follow sports, but I can't remember the last time I sat down and watched the game of anything. It's just like, I just want to be active, I want to be doing something. If I'm not running, I want to be walking.
Wow.
If I'm not walking, it's just, I don't know, maybe part of it is because, I sit here, or I stand here working, all day long, and I just want to be active.
Do you think that, do you think part of that is like a runner's high? Like I sometimes would, and they say you almost have to, it would be like 45 minutes of running. And I did find some of the few long runs I had that I actually ended up enjoying them more than like a 4-mile run. Yeah. Because, I mean, do you you get that like runner's high?
I don't, I'm not sure exactly what runner's high is, but there is a place, especially in longer runs, where you kind of get in the zone. You your sense of time is different. Your sense of where you are is different, and you just, you know, you're just moving, and all you're doing is, you know, monitoring your body, you know, checking things, trying not to fall on your face. You know, but I mean, it's all one thing. You know, it's all just being into one thing. And you know, sometimes you run, and sometimes you think about other stuff, and you know, whatever. But sometimes, you know, you're just doing it.
Like kind of like one with the outdoors.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that, but it's kind of like that.
Yeah,
and I like that a lot.
That's cool. What was your first 100-mile that you finished, and how long did that take?
The one and only, which you know, I have you know, really nice. Again, I'm telling competitive. I have really nice competitive times in the 50K and the 50 mile and the 100K, and I even won a 12-hour race last year at my advanced age. But the longer things are still befuddling me. So this next year, I'm dedicating myself to, you know, really figuring out how to run 100-mile races and 24-hour races. But anyway, back to your question. About 5 years ago, I ran the Burning River 100-mile race, which is a northeast Ohio race. It starts up in Willoughby near Cleveland and finishes in Chagrin Falls. And it's a combination of some road, some bike path, lots of single track through, you know, Cuyahoga National Park, and some tow path. So it's a really good race. I ran the very first one, and it was a horribly hot day. I think it got up to 93 that day because they ran it in early August. So
wow.
You know, it was very difficult to stay hydrated, and at some point it became very difficult to just eat anything. So it was a struggle, and a struggle for a lot of people. I think there was like a 55% finish rate, which is, again, not uncommon in 100-mile races. So the goal of finishing is a major goal for almost everybody, and then you have your time goals, you know, that are based on so many variables. But anyway, I was hoping to run it under 24 hours, which is a common, you know, cut line for a lot of people. You know, just like, you know, maybe 3 hours or 4 hours is a common goal for a lot of people in a marathon.
Yeah.
So 24 hours is the most common, you know, goal for hundreds, and didn't make it in that one. It was like 27 hours and something. So you start at 6 o'clock in the morning or 5 in the morning up in Willoughby, and you know, then you're running all day through the heat, and it's just you know, just trying to get through that, and then you're running, you know, all night. You get a headlamp on, and you're carrying your water and food, and then you just keep trudging along all night long.
How many people are running? How many people run alongside you? I mean, you know, in the race.
Well, in this particular race, I was running with a friend who has run lots of other hundreds, and we just sort of were working it together. But oftentimes in these races, even if 100 or 200 or 300 people started, you could run miles and not see anybody. Could you run a single track in the woods? You know.
Wow. Do they have stands and stuff though?
But still, yeah, they have those aid stations, usually somewhere between 4 and 7 miles apart. And so, you know, when you're running in extreme heat, like during the day, you know, you have to figure out how much water to carry to get you from one aid station to the next.
Wow.
So that was my second attempt at 100. My first attempt, I went down to Rocky Raccoon 100 in Texas, and I finished 60 miles, but about mile 25 or 30, I did have a bad fall, and I did hurt myself, and I just kind of, you know, limped along for another 20 or 25 miles, and decided that was enough.
Wow.
So since then, the really long races have been, you know, my bugaboo.
And when is the next one that you're doing?
I'm doing a race called Long Haul 100 in Tampa. It starts on January 19th, and it's in a preserve where you run it's like a 16.5-mile trail, excuse me, trail loop 6 times.
Wow.
And
wow.
I'm really, I'm really focused on, having my first good 100 mile. I mean, just finishing is good, I know, but I mean, or that's what we always say. But
is that just that's just because you're competitive? Because I mean, most people, it's just amazing that you could finish a marathon, let alone 50 and then 100 miles. But
yeah.
you just, is it because just the competitive nature that you want to?
Yeah, and it's, this is what I do. This is where I set my goals and things now. So I'm just, I just had some goals that I like to,
what do you want to finish this one in then?
Well, it's gonna sound crazy. It's fairly, even though it's trails, it's fairly flat, and and even though I haven't run a 100-mile race under 27 hours, I'd like to run this one under 20 hours.
Wow.
That's my ultimate goal.
That's your and when you get to are there like a lot of times I've heard people say, and I read blogs when I was doing the half marathon, just how much of it is physical and how much of it is mental. And so when you feel that you're running really low, do you have things that you say mentally that keep you going, or is it just a physical rhythm for you?
Yeah, I mean, it is hugely mental. After you're running 16 hours, and then it's easy. It can be so easy to just give up and say, I can't do this anymore, or my legs are trashed, or I just feel too miserable, or just I'm too tired. So yeah, that's the part that you really have to overcome, because you can have you can go through really bad stretches, but then they don't have to last forever either. You just have to have the the patience and the fortitude.
So do you have do you have like a cheerleader kind of in your head? Or?
I sometimes have little mantras that run through my head sometimes when I'm really trying to push through something bad. But most of the time, it's just a matter of staying focused, or saying, setting smaller goals, just, get to this next aid station, and then, set another, shorter term goal.
Wow. And what kind of how long of a resting period do you do, especially after like 100 mile? Like, will you take like 3 weeks off, a month of just, or how quick do you get back to running?
Yeah, well, I'll probably get back to running fairly quickly, but it'll be short and easy and spaced out a lot. I wouldn't start seriously, trying to get some real serious high mileage weeks in for probably 3 weeks or so. For instance, this next year, my pursuit of hundreds and 24s. I'm running the 100 in January. I'm signed up for a 24-hour race in April, which is
what's the difference then?
Yeah, but the difference is that in a 100-mile race, you're trying to run 100 miles and get the best time you can. In a 24-hour race, you're running 24 hours, so starting at 8. And ending at 8, and it's usually on some kind of a short loop course. It could be a mile loop, it could be a 4-mile loop. It's a totally different animal. It's on a trail usually. Sometimes it's on asphalt. And you're trying to get as many miles in as you can.
Oh my God.
So, the goal for a lot of people who are pursuing these seriously is to get over 100 miles. And, there are gradations of that. But your approach to those are somewhat similar as far as the kind of mileage you need to get in to prepare for them. So I have them spaced out for the 100-mile in January, the 24-hour in April. Then I'm going to run the Vermont 100, which is one of the major ones in the country, and I think that's July. And then I have a 24-hour race that I've attempted twice in North Carolina towards the end of September, and it's called Hinson Lake.
Wow. And are they all like fluctuate with hills, or?
Yeah, everyone's different. Like I said, the one in Florida is fairly flat, and I think it sounds like it's you know, it can be sandy and rooty, and you have some river crossings and things like that. But it's considered, you know, not near as taxing as some. I mean, there are some really, really hard 100-mile races in this country. There's Hard Rock out in Colorado, which is, you know, has tens of thousands of elevation feet change. There's near here in Virginia, there's one called Macedon, which is, you know, you're just always running on an extremely rocky, rooty trail. It's just hard to get a rhythm. And,
wow.
You know, the Vermont, the one I'm running in July, is a combination of single track trails and double track, and also you know, back gravel roads, but there's, you know, non-graded, you know, so it's a lot of ups and lots of downs.
Yeah, hard to get a rhythm.
Yeah, I paced a friend on it last year, and pacing in a 100-mile race, they often allow a person to join the competitive runner at somewhere around mile 60 or mile 70 and run with them to the end, oftentimes running with them through the night. And so I got to run the last 30 miles or so of Vermont last July to get, you know, a taste of that racing experience. So I'm going to try to do the whole thing in July.
And what do you mean you attempted the 24-hour in North Carolina?
Well, I've run it twice. The first time 2 years ago, I ran 95 miles.
Oh, you mean you didn't make it to 100?
I didn't make it to 100.
Oh my God.
And